We are beginning this series where for 4 weeks we're going to focus on hope. And I'm so glad that hope is here today because I needed to clarify, although Hope is a delightful person, we will not be focusing on Hope Watkins for 4 weeks in a row. It's just, I'm sorry, Hope, it's not going to happen. It's not you. It's hope, the idea that the future is going to be better than the present. The sense that things are going to be okay. So I've been reading a lot about hope this week, preparing for this series, and there are any number of studies, psychological studies, on the impact of hope in people's lives, in the lives of communities. There was a study that was published in the journal Emotion. It actually came out of the University of Missouri, M-I-Z. Dr. Megan Edwards and Dr. Lauren King are the researchers, and what they found in this study is that hope is the single most important contributor to the feeling that one's life has purpose. Hope is the most consistent predictor that someone will feel like their life is meaningful. They tested a number of things: amusement, excitement, contentment, even happiness. But hope turns out to be the number one predictor that people will feel a sense of meaning and purpose in their life. Dr. Edwards says, our research shifts the perspective on hope from merely a cognitive process related to goal attainment to recognizing it as a vital emotional experience that enriches life's meaning. Stories of hope begin today. For 4 weeks, we will think about people in 4 different scripture stories that demonstrated or exhibited hope in some way, shape, or form. We will ask, where did this hope come from in the story? And we will ask what hope did for the characters of the story, thinking about how we might be able to discover hope in our own lives, in our own community, in our own world. We know the positive effects of hope, that it provides meaning, that it provides structure, that it provides purpose in people's lives. We also know, because of other sets of studies, that hope is in short supply these days. There's a national poll that went out in the spring of 2023 and put out by it at Harvard, and nearly half of Americans under 30, right? Got my demographics? Nearly half of Americans under 30 reported feeling hopelessness at least several days a week. Author Jennifer Moss says, we are living in a constant state of polycrisis. P-O-L-Y-C-R-I-S-I-S. Polycrisis, which is a term I did not know before I read that study, which is pretty descriptive of the world around us. A constant state of polycrisis. The research data shows that when people are exposed to one crisis after another or multiple crises at the same time layered on top of each other, it has long-term impacts on our health, on our relationships. It leads to cynicism, it leads to burnout, it leads to violence. One study, for example, tracked kids who lived in impoverished neighborhoods, and it tracked things like their connections to their family, and it tracked things like their engagement with their community and their school, and the number of fights they got into, and the times they had a weapon, and it tracked all of these things and correlated them. And one of the findings, which I can't wait to share with you, one of the findings of this study found that kids become less hopeless if they have a stronger connection to their mother. Can I get an amen from the room? Come on, moms, where are you out there? Kids, demonstrably, the data back up the reality that teenagers living in these impoverished communities feel less hopelessness, or said another way, more hopeful, if they have a correlating strong connection to their mother. Another finding of this study, which is not so cheery, is that a feeling of hopelessness has a high correlation to weapon use later in life. That the desperation that comes from hopelessness leads to acts of violence against our neighbors, and that violence escalates as hopelessness increases. So hope is in short supply, and yet we know the good that happens when people feel a sense of hope. So it felt like a good time to maybe spend 4 weeks together thinking about hope, where it comes from, and what it can do for us. Certainly dreams are a source of hope in the Joseph story, so we're going to start this week thinking about our friend Joseph. Not the foster dad of Jesus, the son of Jacob. Joseph, that guy. Yeah, that guy. That guy right there. You can think about this Joseph story. It's a long story. Steve read just a little bit of it. It's a long story that hangs basically on 3 different dream sequences. There are 3 acts to the story, and they all center around dreams. So in each act, we're going to take some time to think about 3 questions. Who's dreaming? How is the dream interpreted? And what behaviors emerge after the dream? Who's doing the dreaming? How's the dream interpreted? And what behaviors emerge after the dream? We heard the first dreams today, the first act. Act 1 are Joseph's dreams, and they are interpreted by his brothers. Now, you need to know some things about Joseph and his family. Joseph is not the oldest in his family. He's not the youngest, but he is toward the bottom of the hierarchy. And so by the traditional systems, the traditional family power structures of the day, he's got nothing. He's got no claim. He's just not at all powerful in this family system. However, Jacob loves him best. How many of you have a little brother? So you know that those little siblings, don't get me started. Jacob loves him best, clearly. And Joseph dreams, right? Joseph dreams of these sheaves of corn. And his gets up and is all pretty and walks around. And his brothers, sheaves of corn, bow down to his sheaf of corn. Okay. And they hate him for it. But he is totally clueless, does not pick up on the fact that they hate him. He has another dream and tells them about that one too. It's not sheaves of corn this time. He's a star in the sky, shining oh so brightly. And all his brothers' stars bow down to his star. What a twit. Biblical scholar Michael Williams says, at this point in the story, Joseph is portrayed for us as an arrogant, overly indulged megalomaniac. So the brothers are the ones that are interpreting these dreams in this moment, and the way these dreams are interpreted is as a big power flip. Joseph is the second youngest with no power, and he is now in charge of everything. They interpret this move as a power flip. Jacob's favorite son, by the way, favorite son out of 13 kids altogether. There's one daughter in this mix. And of those 13 kids, there are 4 moms, by the way, 2 of whom are actually married to Jacob, and 2 of whom are actually servants of the family, which is something you might want to drop into a conversation the next time someone wants to talk about biblical definition of marriage. However, for the purposes of this particular sermon, Joseph is flipping the power around with this dream, and the brothers realize that. Right? So based on this interpretation of the dream, the brothers feel it as a threat, and they throw Joseph into a pit. and they sell him into slavery, and they fake his death and tell their dad that he was killed by a wild animal. Walter Brueggemann says, now the brothers are not political theorists, but they know the threat of hope. Ooh. They know the threat of hope. They're the older ones. They have had things as they wanted them. Against their age and power, the boy is helpless, so he dreams. The boy is helpless, so he dreams. The dream is a way of hoping for a new arrangement, very different from the present. Even as a dream, such hope is a threat. It anticipates the end of the present order. But this first dream sequence does not work out well for Joseph. Not only is he sold into slavery, a couple other chapters, and he actually ends up in jail. It's in jail where we have the second dream sequence. And here in jail, two fellow prisoners are the ones who have the dreams. One is a baker, and one is a cupbearer. And they've been thrown into jail because they made Pharaoh mad, and they both have dreams. The baker's dream is about holding up a basket of bread, and the birds come and eat it. The butcher, unlike baker, butcher, candlestick maker. The cupbearer's dream is about finding some grapes, making some wine, and serving Pharaoh. And they can't interpret this dream. So that's what their dreams are. They are not in charge of anything anymore. They are all powerless. The hierarchy has been completely eliminated from this act of the play. They are all powerless, all equal, sharing this moment together in jail. And Joseph gives the interpretation in this case. Joseph says to the baker, sorry, buddy, you're going to be executed. The 3 baskets of bread stand for 3 days. In 3 days, you're going to be executed. And to the cupbearer, he says, good news for you, though, because what the 3 branches of grapes signifies is that in 3 days, you're going to be set free from jail, and you will be serving Pharaoh once again. So that's the interpretation here. It's moderately hopeful for, if you're a cupbearer, it is, but it's not for everyone. And the behaviors that emerge as a response to this interpretation are, in fact, as Joseph predicted. The baker is executed, the cupbearer is released from jail and begins to serve Pharaoh again. Now, in his interpretation, Joseph has said to the cupbearer, hey, by the way, when you are set free and start serving Pharaoh again, would you just drop my name into the conversation? I mean, just mention me a little bit. Well, he forgets. Cupbearer forgets to mention Joseph, and Joseph spends 2 more years in jail. Which brings us to the third act of the play, the third set of dreams. In this set of dreams, it's Pharaoh himself who's doing the dreaming. Now, you talk about hierarchy, you talk about power. When we're talking about Pharaoh, we're talking about the power. We're talking about the empire, the one who embodies all of the authority. Brueggemann says Pharaoh embodies and represents raw, absolute worldly power. That Pharaoh is, like Pilate after him, a stand-in for the whole of the empire. And this supremely powerful individual has a dream where there are 7 really healthy cows that come out of the river, and there are 7 absolutely starving cows, very thin, emaciated cows, that come out of the river and eat the other cows. Great. It's a great dream. I love that so much. And then he has another dream. He has 2 dreams. And in this dream, there are 7 ears of corn that are very healthy and producing all the kernels and grains. And then there's 7 other ears that are terrible. And they, somehow or other, eat the healthy ears of corn as well. So he has these 2 dreams, and he can't figure them out. He cannot interpret them. And it just so happens he's got this cupbearer. And when the Pharaoh says, I can't figure out these dreams, the cupbearer says, oh, I was supposed to tell you about this guy that you have in your jail that might be able to come help you. And Pharaoh's like, bring him on. So Joseph does the interpreting here too. And Joseph says, here's what these dreams are all about. There's going to be a famine in Egypt. In fact, there's going to be 7 years of a famine in Egypt. It's going to be unlike anything. It's going to be awful. This famine is going to happen 7 years from now. 7 years, by the way, that are going to be very healthy years, where there will be plenty of food, plenty for people to eat. In fact, more than people need to eat. And that is the interpretation. So what are the behaviors in response to this interpretation? Well, note here that the Pharaoh does have options as to how he's going to behave given this dream and its interpretation, because he is the power. He is supremely in charge of this nation. Anything that he says out loud happens in the world. By the stroke of a pen, he could do almost anything he wanted to do. He could, in this moment, say, this is just a dream. We're not going to have a famine. Everything's fine here. Everything's just fine. It's going to be great. And ignore the issue. Ignore it altogether. That's an option. He's the Pharaoh. He could do that. He could say, well, this is really scary. What I'm going to do while I'm in power here is line my own pockets. I'm going to make it so that I'm okay in 7 years. I could store up everything for myself. I am going to utilize the power of my office to make myself comfortable, to make myself richer, and to make sure that I'm going to be okay when bad stuff happens. Again, any resemblance to present day political figures is purely coincidental when I say that out loud. But that's an option. He is Pharaoh. He could use his office to take care of himself. Or he could think about his people. He could think about the people of Egypt. And he could say, okay, this is going to be bad, and we need to make a plan here so that everyone has enough to eat during those famine years. And it just so happens that that's the choice he makes, that that's the action that he takes in this moment. He does make a plan to take care of everyone, motivated by this dream that he has, motivated by the sense of hope that Joseph's interpretation has given him. He makes this third choice. The brothers, they heard hope as a threat to their power and made a different choice. They made a choice to get rid of that threat, get it out of their lives. Pharaoh recognizes hope not as a threat, but as a power that could be used for the well-being of all. Now, there's another detail to this story. Joseph actually suggests that he be the one to oversee this project. He is going to be in charge of rationing for the next 7 years. And again, like that dream in the field, he sees himself in charge of something. He sees himself as having authority, but there's a big difference. Here, Joseph sees himself as having authority that he can use on behalf of others. It is not for his own self-aggrandizement. It is not for his own glory. It is so that he can help others and make sure that the rest of the nation has enough to eat during the famine. It is for the good of the community, for the common good of all. So now, having dreamed this dream that is for the good of all, Pharaoh makes a different choice and elevates Joseph to second in command to Pharaoh himself, which is just a huge moment in this story. There is a tangible, structural, systemic change that is made in the governance of Egypt, and it's based on a dream that Pharaoh has. The dream comes first, and then the systemic change follows the dream. Did you hear me? The dream comes first, and then the structural, tangible, systemic change emerges. And it works. It works great. Egypt stores up food, and the people do not suffer during the years of famine. And because this is a selfless dream, and because structural changes were made based on this dream, it ultimately leads not just to the feeding of the people of Egypt, but to reconciliation among Joseph and his family. Dreams that are sources of hope lead to reconciliation, lead to peace, lead to community, lead to the good of all. Each one of these three dreams in this story does point to the future, but it's not until that third dream sequence do we find a truly hopeful outcome. The sense that everything's going to be okay, not just for me, but for everyone. For that's really what hope is. A feeling that everything is going to be okay for everyone. And often that feeling emerges in spite of evidence to the contrary. That's what distinguishes it from optimism, by the way. Optimism is the feeling that things are going to be okay because of evidence. But hope is different than that. It's in spite of what you see in the world that we feel that things are going to be okay. So bring us back to this idea that hope is good for us, but it's also in short supply today. Why is that? Why can we not seem to get our hearts and minds around hopefulness these days? I just wonder if it might be because we have forgotten the power of dreaming. We have forgotten to tap into our dreams in order to lead us into that future. You know, in the church, for decades upon decades, we have agonized about the future. We are in decline as a denomination. We are in decline as a religion. Christianity is in decline, and we have agonized and wrung our hands and strategized about the future. And we ended up taking bits and pieces from the business world, thinking that if we just take this piece and this piece over here and smack it into the church without any context or connection, then surely that'll help us out. One of those examples, by the way, that we've taken out of the business world and tried to apply at the church without any other context, they're called SMART goals. How many are with me when you know what a SMART goal is? In your workplace, you might use goals. Now, if the S of SMART stands for specific, and then we've got measurable, attainable, there's different words that people use in different places, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. I'm sorry if you're activated right now, like if you're SMART goals. And so we try to smash these SMART goals into church work, right? So if you could just get a SMART goals going, then we're all going to be fine. I would submit to you that that's okay, but maybe we've forgotten about some other things that we need to include in our dreams for the future. Maybe we need to have, instead of SMART goals, SMIRT goals. Maybe the goals of the church should be Spirit-led. Maybe the goals of the church should be magnanimous, that is, gracious and humble and generous. Maybe the goals of the church should be inspired by God. Maybe the goals of the church we need to remember to be relational. After all, we are in community with one another. God is a triune presence. And maybe our goals should be transcendent. Maybe we need to make goals that carry us out of ourselves and into the presence of God. Maybe, just maybe, we could think about SMIRT goals instead of SMART goals, or in addition to. Maybe we should just stop asking, so what is your strategic plan for the future of the church? And instead, remember to ask, what's your dream? What do you dream about? Hope in the church, I'm sorry, it's not going to come from a strategic plan. Hope for the church will emerge from our dreams. And with our dreams as the starting point, only then can we begin to create those strategic plans that would operationalize that vision and bring all of our dreams to life in the world. Brueggemann says, the dream is the unsettling work of Yahweh upon which everything else depends. The unsettling work of God upon which all else that we do depends. For these next 4 weeks, there's going to be a dream board in the back of the room. On that board, everyone is invited and welcome to take some time with this question: what's your hope for the future of Maplewood United Methodist Church? What's your dream in this congregation? There are a couple of responses already up there, which are beautiful to see. So take some time. Maybe it's not today. Maybe you need to pray on it a little bit. Write down or draw or whatever it is, your hope and dream for the future of this congregation, and pin it to the board. You can put one per person. You can put one every week if you want to. You can add it later, whatever you need. And at the end of this series, at the end of these 4 weeks, we will have gathered together this collection of dreams from which to draw our hope for the future. Langston Hughes wrote, "Hold fast to dreams, for if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly." May God grant us dreams so that we can enter into the hopefulness of God's future, dream God's dream again.